Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 12th day of April 2023, and it is 21 degrees and sunny. It was cool, 17 degrees in the morning, and a wonderful time of the year when it's not too hot and not too cold. Well, that's for someone's preference, and I think it is that the times are changing, and we're getting more and more, light coming in the later part of the day, and in the morning it's getting a little bit more dark as well. If you're especially going around in the early morning for your morning walks. Well, right now, let's take a quick look at the news in brief first before we go into details.
The economy has dimmed in the face of chronically high inflation, rising interest rates and uncertainties from bank collapses. That's according to the latest report from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF has substantially downgraded its outlook for global economic growth in 2023 to 2.8%. It also expects Australia's economy to grow by just 1.6% this year.
Tropical cyclone Ilse off the Western Australian coast has been upgraded to a Category 2 system. The rapidly developing storm is bringing intense rain and destructive wind gusts of up to 140 kilometres an hour for some parts of the Kimberley coast. The storm is forecast to intensify into a Category 3 system later today before developing into a Category 4 tomorrow.
The fault lines in the Liberal Party over the Voice referendum appear to be growing after the Shadow Attorney General Julian Leeser yesterday quit the front bench over the decision to advocate a no vote. Mr Leeser's move has been welcomed by backbencher Bridget Archer, who says she hopes others in the party will decide to support the yes case. Mr Leeser's decision comes just days after the former Minister for Indigenous Australians, Ken Wyatt, quit the party in disgust.
One of Australia's most successful and celebrated artists, John Olsen, has died at the age of 95. He was known for his vivid landscapes and drew inspiration from Sydney Harbour and Lake Eyre. He became the oldest winner of the Archibald Prize at the age of 78.
An amazing footage there of his paintings there with Paul Keating, yes, and he will be remembered. Well, the news about the Liberal Party, and they're saying opposing the Voice. Why would you even think of that? Who would have come up with that sort of an idea? Well, when everyone is talking about how good and how successful Australia's multiculturalism is, and all different societies coming in, everyone getting their rights, they're getting their grants and everything. So why not our Indigenous people? Why can't they be given a voice? And what I don't believe in is probably the referendum. I believe that, the politicians should have just got together and just given it without having to go through the referendum. It is that simple. Just work out the details. Yeah, maybe the details needed to be worked out between the parties, come to an agreement, sit down with the Indigenous elders and the leaders, and coin out something that is workable. When you go into referendum and things like that, you calling for a public debate, and maybe that could be divisive. That could be divisive. The referendum could be divisive, not the Voice itself. Because that, I believe personally, is something that we should go for, and for Liberal Party, LNP, to come out openly and oppose that. See what's happening within the party. Everyone's leaving just because of that decision. So someone somewhere has been ill-informed or ill-advised. Let's take a look at the report.
Set to go back to the polls in a matter of months.
The Prime Minister has revealed more details about the upcoming Voice to Parliament referendum.
The Voice to Parliament.
The first major hurdle to enshrine an Indigenous voice to Parliament has been overcome.
Here's a question that every Australian of voting age will have to answer this year. A proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? It's a big question, but your answer will be as simple as yes or no. Let's start with the basics. The plan is to put the voice in the Constitution, the document that outlines how Australia is governed. To do anything to the Constitution, there has to be a national vote, the referendum. As a country, we don't change the Constitution often. In fact, we've only tried 44 times in our history, on everything from the railway disputes to local government to the length of parliamentary terms.
If they change the Constitution, they're stuck with that for a long time. It's entrenched there and it's very hard to remove. And that makes people very wary of voting for change.
Since Federation, most governments have struggled to make decisions that improve the lives of Indigenous people. Take the White Australia policy or the Stolen Generations. They were actually policies that made the lives of Indigenous people much harder. Combine that with the issues caused by colonisation, and a lot of Indigenous people are worse off than the broader population in terms of health, wealth and education. That's where the voice comes in getting Indigenous people to have a say over what happens to them, sometimes called self-determination, is seen as one of the best ways to close the gap.
And we know from the evidence that what improves people's lives is when they get a say, and that's what this is about.
Let me take you back to 2017, to the Uluru National Constitutional Convention. Indigenous leaders from across the country gathered in the Red Centre to try and come up with a plan to improve the lives of their communities.
There has to be some really fundamental change in the relationship. Australia has to hear us, for goodness sake.
After days of talks, a consensus was reached on the Uluru Statement, 400-ish words that outline what Indigenous people say needs to change. The statement asks for three things: voice, treaty and truth.
It's very short on detail, but it is a very big idea.
This is where it landed. The Voice would be a group of Indigenous people who advise governments on whether proposed policies and laws would be good or bad for their communities. And here comes the important bit. These are the three sentences that could be added to the Constitution in order to create a voice. In recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice may make representations to Parliament and the Executive Government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. It seems straightforward, and it's what the Uluru Statement was calling for, but nothing's that easy, and this is where the debate begins. There are two phrases amongst all that's raised questions about the proposal, and that's make representations and executive government of the Commonwealth. For some who are arguing the no case, that gives the Voice too much freedom to get involved with a whole wide range of issues. If the referendum succeeds, the Voice will be enshrined in the Constitution, basically meaning it can't be disbanded or gotten rid of down the track, something that has happened to First Nations bodies in the past.
What has happened in most cases, a party will appeal to the voters that it will get rid of this XYZ body because it's clear that it's not working. And that's happened, I think we reckoned 7 times in our history.
The thing is, with the detail on the Voice, even if the referendum succeeds, the Parliament will still write the laws on it. That legislation will still go through the Parliament. So things like how many people are on it and how much public funding it gets could be debated and changed, like any bill. There are ideas about a lot of those things already. Most of them come from this report. Professors Tom Calma and Marcia Langton wrote it in 2021, after speaking with thousands of people and organisations across the country. Their model for the Voice is twofold. First, there would be local and regional voice groups that would be designed and run by communities in whatever way suits them best. The idea is to move away from organisations acting on behalf of communities and empower them to speak for themselves. Those local and regional groups would feed into a national voice. 24 different people covering 35 regions. 5 of them would represent the remote communities and 3 would be from the Torres Strait. The local and regional voice groups would decide who gets to be on a national voice. Then the different voice groups would work with each other and all different levels of government, from the federal parliament to the local councils. The expectation is the voice would be consulted early on in policy making when it affects Indigenous people, and the voice would road test ideas and make suggestions on how they could be improved. The voice wouldn't have the power to stop policies and laws from going ahead, and any advice it gave could theoretically be ignored. This isn't necessarily the model the government would eventually put into law, but given how much consultation went into the report, it'll at least be a starting point for whatever ends up being put to the Parliament. So why won't the government tell us exactly what the voice will be before we vote? A general rule of thumb for getting a referendum over the line is keeping it simple. Section 128 says the Constitution can only be changed when a double majority is reached at a national vote. That means a majority of all voters, as well as a majority of the states, have to vote yes. So to get it over the line, the referendum would need the support of over 8.5 million of the 17 million enrolled voters, and 4 out of the 6 states. Votes in the territories would go towards the national total. Of 44 referendums held to try and change the Constitution since 1901, only 8 have been successful. So where are we at now? At least a quarter of the population have already said that they'll vote no. Up to a third say they're undecided, which means the yes vote started the campaign with less than half of the population's support. Even within the Indigenous community, there are a range of views on the voice, and there are questions being raised over whether this is the right thing to do.
Do we want to become an advisory body to the colonial system?
Some people want more action on truth-telling and treaty before the voice, and some want more practical policies tackling disadvantage to be rolled out. Others want a different type of recognition, like seats in the Senate reserved for Indigenous representatives, where they could theoretically have more of a say. And there are those who see the Constitution as a colonial document, and they don't want to be recognised in it. In the broader population, there are some who don't think Indigenous Australians should have a designated channel to the Parliament. But supporters say change has to happen, and this model is the best compromise to get First Nations people both constitutional recognition and a say on government policy.
The existence of a voice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples does not negate anyone else's abilities to be heard, to have their voices as heard as well. It's not a zero-sum game here.
So that's just about everything you need to know before you decide whether you vote yes or no to change the Constitution. Everyone will get an equal say over what happens, and whatever way the vote lands, it'll be a defining moment for the nation.
A defining moment for the nation it will be, and I'll just hope that it's not a divisive one as well. That's the only challenge that we have there. Well, right now, let's go to this festival at the Pachim, and it draws a huge crowd to Northern Territory.
Central Australia's ancient landmarks shining bright in the night sky. The 2023 Parjima program drawing thousands of visitors to experience the world's oldest continuous culture in a new light.
We all respect. We got one dreaming, one mind, one heart.
This year's theme, Listening with Heart, encouraging Australians to contemplate and reflect on who we are as a nation.
I think Australia is reawakening to the first scientists. So we're really looking within what our country has. And of course, we're looking within our dialogue as well and our truth-telling.
As the tourism season kicks into full gear, there's hope the Free Festival can help turn the tide on Alice Springs after months of negative attention due to crime and social issues in the region.
Parjima might be a light festival, but actually it has been a saving grace for this region this year. It has really showed people what is at the heart of Alice Springs, and that is the Arrernte culture.
Kamilaroi Mancori taught a draw card for the event, sharing his own experience to inspire children through science in the classroom and help them connect with STEM subjects.
You know, we've really got to change the image of what we see as scientists, because we see Albert Einstein and Thomas Edison, and that's one demographic of people. But if I wanted to show you what a scientist looks like, you probably should hold a mirror.
The 10-day festival runs until this Sunday. Lee Robinson, ABC News.
Seems like a lot of fun. One day we need to get out there, and that is the thing that a lot of locals and Australians do not see our own backyard, but we travel the world. Well, there you are. But the festival looking just amazing as ever in those amazing array of colors there. But right now, looking at our air quality, what is happening there?
As temperatures fall, Caitlin's days in the sun are numbered.
I basically live like like everyone else did in lockdown. Like, I just don't leave my house. I order everything for delivery.
When she does go out, she has to carry a pharmacy's worth of medication. Her severe asthma is triggered not only by the cold, but by smoke from her neighbours' chimneys.
We're a community and the air is for everyone. They don't have the right to be polluting it in the community. There are other people here that suffer because of those choices, and I don't think that it's something that everyone considers.
The onset of winter has stoked calls for the ACT government to act.
Many are unaware of the significant amounts of small particulate pollution produced from a single wood fire heater, so we would encourage people to consider healthier, cleaner alternatives.
Rebates of up to $1,250 are already on offer for Canberrans who replace their wood fire heating with an electric alternative. Asthma Australia wants that incentive to be increased, along with a broader commitment to phasing out wood fire heaters altogether.
Just as they have required that there be no new gas connections from 2023, we believe that they can use a similar mechanism to set a date to ensure that there's no new installations of wood heaters in new homes.
The ACT's Sustainability and Environment Commissioner has already called for a ban on new wood heaters in all suburbs. The government says it's being considered.
We're really looking at the impacts in terms of emissions as well as health impacts. So this is an important conversation. It is an active conversation that we're having within government.
Fuel for the debate ahead of the June budget. Harry Frost, ABC News.
Just wondering what might happen to all the wood-fired pizza ovens. We have all lived along with the piles of wood in the backyard in many countries, being used for heating, for cooking, for many things. And now that's going to end as well, together with gas. So, we might be looking at other forms of energy, but the life today is getting very, very, very restrictive. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, let's take a very quick look at the advice for those affected by the Tasmanian data breach. And we're seeing more and more of this. We had the Latitude one and the banks. And so what is happening today's day and age with all these enormous amount of data that we collect?
So what can you do to protect your data? In relation to this breach, the government has already urged people to keep an eye on their bank transactions for anything out of the ordinary. And if you spot anything weird, contact your bank. But there are some more general tips from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre to help keep you safe. You can limit the amount of data you share online, on social media and with different organisations. Consider whether a website actually needs things like your address or phone number. Deal with organisations that have a commitment to cybersecurity. Avoid any that have a bad reputation or that you're unsure about. Next, avoid reusing passwords for online accounts. Don't create accounts you won't use regularly. Now, to secure your profiles, change passwords, check account recovery details are up to date, and enable multi-factor authentication. An example is the use of SMS codes when logging in, as well as a password.
Yes, that maybe that's the way of things like today, changing passwords, the multi-factor authentication. All this are, excuse my language, they're really a pain. You keep forgetting, you really want to get to something. The one instant yesterday, I was trying to log into something on the phone. They said, all right, so you are doing that on the phone. And then they said, all right, we have sent a code via text. And that text is coming to that same phone. So you got to get out of that program, go and find that text, and remember the code or write it down somewhere, get back into, by the time you get back to there, that page is gone. So, how do you do? So, many of these things are not very well thought about, or they're not very user friendly, and some of them could be real outright annoying. But if you want your data to be protected, these are the things that you need to do, regardless of how annoying they might be. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today. Well, we are in April, but we are still not on the full swing with all our programming. Some of our programs have been interrupted at this point in time. We'll keep you updated on how we're going with the daily news from India, and of course, we very soon plan to resume our real estate section with Usha Chandra as well. Well, for right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events taking place. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today in this segment. Well, it's been wonderful having your company as usual. Until tomorrow, it is goodbye from us.